Good morning, Southwest Florida, and welcome to the American Tradesman Show with my guest, Juan Silva,
Good morning.
and my other guest, Brian Prevette from Prevette Plumbing,
Morning.
and Gerald from B&K Water Extraction and Mold Services. These are my three men, my guys. Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Welcome again from the New Year's Eve, all right? I mean, we're all back, right, Brian? Are you back
yeah.
from New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
Are you prepared now? You've kind of ready to get on to the new year.
Survived.
Survive. I heard last week you were going to get perm. I don't know if did that happen.
No, I switched to a mullet. The mullet perm.
Business in the front, party in the back.
That may be more like party in the back, business all over.
Joe Dirt.
Well, we're here this morning to talk about not only joking around, but also about contracting. Last week we talked about subcontracting and contracting and permitting. I think most of the thing we talked about, Gerald, was some of the permits that people are having to pull and what the legal aspects of pulling a permit and some of the things that people do that aren't legal, right, Gerald?
That's right.
And a lot of times people are pulling these permits, maybe even not even getting a permit pulled. I mean, Brian, we talked about that, right? People told that they're pulled the permit, then the job is done, and they found out they didn't even have a permit.
It doesn't cover the whole scope.
Or it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't even. I mean, it doesn't. It didn't even have a permit. They may have said they pulled the permit, but they didn't do the permit. And a lot of times, Juan, we'd show up on the job times, and they've been told they had a permit, and then we look it up, but we don't even see it, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So a lot of things that we talk about on the show is about permitting, contracting, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, any subcontractors that we are in touch with and deal with on a daily basis is what the show's about. And this week we're going to continue talking about contracting, but also some of the new products, right, Juan, from the electrical side?
Yeah, some new products and some, old issues.
Old issues, new issues, Gerald? Is there any new issues?
There's always going to be new issues.
It's every day. That's a daily thing. New issues and big issues and how we survive in the world, right, Brian?
That's it.
So the show is about subcontractors and us talking about it. And so, Juan, I wanted to kind of touch base this morning and talk to you a little bit about electrical. I mean, I know Christmas is over. I'm not sure if you guys are starting to take Christmas lights back down. Brian, did you take your Christmas tree down?
No.
Do you even have one up?
No.
Oh, I was just checking.
Palm tree?
Foxtail?
I usually take it down with a machete and throw it in a bag and put it out by the road.
I see now that they want you to give it to the goats. I seen that on the news the other night that the goats think that's a treat. So if you have a Christmas tree, I heard this on the news the other night that take him to a goat. I mean, a goat will eat him like it's a treat. So I can only say if you got a tree without all those fancy sprays on it and tinsel, I don't think they want to eat tinsel. But if you have a live Christmas tree, I heard the other night that you could give them to a farmer. They'll give them to goats. So Juan, talk to us about a little bit of electrical on your questioning.
Yeah, well, what I want to talk about today was old issues, and that's aluminum wiring in branch circuits.
Now is the heater time.
Now's the heater time. Houses back in the day, 1960s and 70s, they were wired in aluminum branch circuit wiring, 14 gauge, 12 gauge. That's a smaller wiring for those of you who that wires up the lights in your house, the outlets. Well, the issue there is that over time it corrodes, and it corrodes even faster if it's in contact with copper. So with a bunch of the devices, a lot of devices, older devices may have been made with copper elements in the terminals. But the issue with aluminum as well is that it heats, expands and contracts rapidly. So it causes loose connections. And with that, it causes arcs and fires.
A lot of times, I mean, people don't recognize aluminum wire is still being used to this day for service feeders, right?
Yes, that's the larger.
So it's the larger size. But branch circuits, we're talking about anything that's small, like you said, a light, a receptacle. A lot of times that we find out from receptacles, you can pull them off, and, I mean, they've burnt almost the backside of the outlet out.
Well, in our experience is that, when we go replace a receptacle, and you're talking about 60s and 70s, the aluminum wire just breaks right off the receptacle.
Yeah, I mean, people don't recognize how hot somebody, I mean, most of the time I see laundry rooms where the ironing board or the iron has always been. I can tell you that has been used and burnt up a lot.
Yeah, so what ends up happening with the aluminum wire is that it starts to degrade. And when you don't have enough surface or material, I should say, with that aluminum wire, you pretty much cause a resistance. And that causes the wire to break down faster, overheat, and causes issues.
Well, inside of a receptacle is copper, right?
Copper.
So what happens is that you stab it in the back, right?
Yeah, they stab it in the back. That's just a whole separate issue there.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what you see is a lot of times as a receptacle is a backstab, and that's what we call it in the electrical world, not the physical world, backstabbing. But backstabbing is a common it's a common word to use from electrical.
Yes. And manufacturers, they created a fast way to connect wires to the receptacles, which is a stab lock. And, the issue with that as well, it's misused. An untrained person will stab multiple wires on the back of the receptacle, and then if they do have multiple wires in that box, they'll wrap them around the terminal screws instead of doing pigtails. Now, what we call pigtails is when we gather our branch circuits, our wiring, and we group them together, and we come out with one lead to wrap around the terminal of the receptacle.
So you use one wire not on all the circuits that are coming in, and then one wire going to the unit, the receptacle.
Yes. And that makes a good, solid connection to continuously feed the circuit throughout the home.
A lot of wire from aluminum was used in Bonita. I mean, I know myself, a lot of small branch circuits were used up in Bonita at the time when aluminum was something that they thought was a cheaper conductor, right?
Yeah, that was the basis of it. It was cheaper. The reasoning.
It's not like it's gold. I mean, that's the best conductor. I don't think we're going to put gold on anything, right?
Yeah, don't find me in that house.
Yeah. If we found that house, I don't think we'd be around, eh, Brian? Yeah. Matter of fact, I think if I found gold in the backside of that outlet, I'd be in a better shape right now today. I'd have hundreds of them. I'd have cut them out by now. But, it's common that we see it as electricians. What people out there in the audience don't understand is that receptacles are plugged in and plugged out like nobody even pays attention to it. And then Christmas lighting comes around. Next thing you know, they got lights blinking. Sometimes the outlet doesn't work. In most cases, those GFIs or anything that we're talking about was probably never protected right, or in any case, it could have been a Federal Pacific panel.
It just listing everything that you just said, there's multi-layer issues there. One, let's just start from the beginning. One, let's just Christmas lights. You have large strings of Christmas lights, high amperage. Then two, if you have a very old receptacle that's gotten loose over the years, now you have a plug connecting into a receptacle that does not make a good connection. Then behind that, you have aluminum wire or stabbed wire behind that receptacle that's degrading. And then going down the line to where that receptacle is getting power is a Federal Pacific panel, which is obsolete. It's very dangerous. They cause fires. And if you're stuck in a situation like that, I would say you need to give us a call.
And that's an aluminum bus bar also, right?
Aluminum bus bar, the breakers. The issue with that panel is the breakers over time do not keep their connection.
Or they don't have a trip instantaneously on them, too.
That's one of the biggest problems with them as well, is that they do not trip.
Well, Federal Pacific is one panel. Zinsco is another one.
Zinsco is another.
I mean, we have several listings of panels if you have them in your home. And one of the things we talked about a few weeks ago was this generator panel where you transfer it from a brand new panel to a generator panel, right?
Yeah, so, I would say, to be honest with you, about 9 out of 10 calls that we get for panel change-outs is, it's the homeowner realizing, other than us telling you on the radio, an insurance company mandating that they replace their electrical panel.
Yeah, we've been to so many inspections where they've called us and said, the insurance company told me to change out my electrical panel because of Zinsco or Federal Pacific or some of these other older panels that didn't have a trip instantaneously. And a lot of them were aluminum bus bars.
Yeah.
And so, when you're talking to an electrician, it sounds a little bit, sometimes Chinese, but what we're talking about is, over time periods of 30 to 40 years, you're going to have some outlets that probably are burnt up in the backside of those receptacles, right?
Yeah. Over my period of time, I've found many receptacles that are melted in the backside. I'll get calls of lights flickering, and coming down to the root cause of, like I said earlier, wires not being pigtailed in a receptacle that causes the lights flickering because it's making loose connections of a receptacle being stabbed in the back.
Well, one of the things over at American Electrical is you can inspect a home to telling the people, I mean, the audience, I say people, but I say the audience, if you call this out for an inspection, right?
Yeah,
we pull the panel cover and you can see exactly what kind of wire you got.
Exactly. We will pull the panel cover off. We'll take a look at the breakers. And then, I've done it quite a few times already where we'll pull out receptacles and we'll look at the receptacles and we'll see if they are stabbed in the back. We will see if they are pigtailed. And that's when we'll make the recommendation to go throughout the home, replace any faulty receptacles, see if they want to bring it up to code to make it tamper resistant, remove the stab lock, and do pigtails and wrap them around the terminal screws for a solid connection.
It's important to understand that the receptacles are where almost as if it's a hand or a finger. Those are your kind of lifelines for keeping things running in the home. A lot of people don't understand. Over the period of time, I've watched microwaves being installed where range hoods used to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would see the range hood wire being used for the microwave circuit.
Yeah, it's a very common issue in condos where, there was a range hood installed that shared the same lighting circuit as the kitchen. Well, the range hood housed a small little motor that just blew out the exhaust. Well, now you're converting over to a 1400 watt microwave or larger. And, we normally get the calls and saying, hey, I just popped in my new microwave and my lights are dimming in the kitchen, or the breaker's tripping because it's sharing a lighting circuit versus it being a dedicated circuit on the way it should be.
Yeah, I know that. During that process of my own self, wiring homes from 1980 to right now, the majority of homes were really kind of almost 15 years before we started adding dedicated circuits for bathrooms, hypothetically. Yeah. Not to say it, but garages were always tapped off of a lighting circuit from the kitchen. And a lot of people don't recognize that, just that 15 years ago is when the code started to require dedicated circuit for a garbage disposal, dedicated circuit for a dishwasher. Right now, up until that point, we have to use GFIs for, garbage and dishwasher disposals.
Yeah, so now we have to protect garbage disposal, dishwashers, small appliances in kitchens. Even now, the new change was garage door openers. Garage door openers having to be GFCI protected as well.
Yeah, I think people from a home inspection, and this is where I go back to always checking your panels at least once a year, maybe twice a year, right, Juan? People don't recognize it's almost like oil change, and then you tell somebody, well, nothing's breaking. So why do I need to check it, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is about electrical panels, you should actually have your circuit breakers exercised once a year. And what I mean by that is an electrician come in, turn the circuits off, and turn them on. Because what ends up happening, if they do not get exercised at least once a year and 15 plus years pass by, well, that breaker is going to get locked in its spot. So when you do have a fault, it doesn't trip, and that could be an issue.
I'm sure just as well, and Brian, and you guys can contest this. From a standpoint of home inspections, people don't know about braided lines. And some people just know that pipe just comes out the wall, right, Gerald?
Yeah, we have a home inspection license, so we know the requirements to obtain those and to perform that job. But even with a home inspection license, they're not going to know the ins and outs of the different fields. So if you're looking to buy a home, don't just take the word from a home inspector because they are very knowledgeable, but they're not going to be knowledgeable enough. Call in a licensed plumber to do an inspection. Call in a licensed electrician. Call in a licensed HVAC person to come in and inspect these for you because they're basically going to tell you, yes, it's functional. But that doesn't mean that, the electrician's going to come by and you, like Juan said, pull out the outlet and take a look at, the switch and tell you if there's other underlying conditions. Just because you can plug something into it and it works, that doesn't tell you the underlying conditions. That just tells you it's going to give you 120 right at that point. That doesn't mean that in 5 years it may burn down your house. And that's something that an electrician can tell you. Same thing from the plumbing aspect. We can come in, we can look at this, do a full inspection, and tell you this line doesn't look good. It's probably going to pop on you soon. Whereas if it's not leaking at the moment, that's all a home inspector is going to tell you. Is what's happening right at that moment. And we can look ahead at items. We can look at it and tell, yes, this is ready to go or anything like that. That's just something you need.
I'm sorry, Gerald, I didn't want to cut you off, but the home inspection, one of the things you were saying about a home inspector, I've always over the years, a realtor calls a home inspection guy out, and then there's a disclosure on the bottom of that contract most of the time.
Every one of them.
And it states, please call a licensed electrical contractor. Please call a licensed please call a plumbing or a plumbing contractor. And it's almost like they've just said, okay, I told you what could be wrong, but get the real guys to tell you right. I mean,
They're going to put exclusions that leaves the liability off of them for anything that may happen, because all they're going to say is it's leaking and functioning correctly. It's not leaking. So I mean, they're not going to tell you that, hey, this looks like it could pop at any moment. All they're going to say is it's functioning and not leaking.
One of the things that we talked about on those home inspections was those burp tanks that were on top of the water heaters with CPVC. And over the years, what transpired, I mean, from a home inspection side, right? I mean, Brian, you know that, right? Yeah. Some of the things that happened with the plumbing side of it is that a home inspector probably seen the water heater and didn't see a problem, but that should be something that should be listed. I mean, a burp tank.
Yeah,
right?
well, and what people don't realize is the expansion tank, or the burp tank as you're calling it, actually, if it fails, it doesn't give you any indication that it failed. It's going to fill with water. And if it's on CPVC, of course, it's going to lean over. But if it's on a sturdy pipe that will support the weight of it, you never know that it failed. And what will happen then is you don't have any room for expansion in your line. So what's going to happen is the line's going to pop, or worse yet, your hot water heater is going to pop because there's no room for expansion. So if you do have an expansion tank, you'd really want it replaced with a pressure valve, because like I said, you don't know when that thing has failed. It could be 3, 4, 5 years old and you still think it's functioning correctly, but it's already failed and that bladder's filled with water and there's no room for expansion. So it's going to leave a problem somewhere in your line. I mean, that water's got to go somewhere, and that pressure builds up. It's not going to go back to the county because they've installed backflows. They're going to protect their line, so something in your home is going to give.
How would a homeowner be able to check if they have a pressure valve?
A pressure valve or an expansion tank?
Yeah, how would they
They
know
would call a licensed plumber.
Aha, there we go.
239-596-5533.
Don't fret.
Call Prevent.
And then there's another one. Don't fret. Call B&K, Water Extractions,
if it does pop,
and Mold Services. You like that, don't
Yeah.
you? You like that, didn't you? I can remember after 7 times.
Take 35.
Let me say that one more time, Gerald, just from my own standpoint. B&K, Water Extraction, and Mold Services, right?
That's it, buddy.
That's the way to call them. What's that phone number?
239-398-9834.
All right. Well, I wanted to go back into the aluminum wire because some of the things you're talking about right now, people don't recognize is that the heater is being turned on from the home because it's a little bit chilly, right, Brian? Oh, yeah. I mean, you putting your jacket on, Brian, and your boots in the morning?
Yeah, I'm still wearing shorts. It's Florida.
So
By lunchtime, it's hot.
That's right. That's the truth.
I'll be guilty of that. I like going to bed, at 73, but then when I wake up in the morning and my house is,
Don't say it.
67, I go up and the first thing I do is I go turn on my heater.
Oh, so your feet are a little bit warm.
Well, the feet are the first ones to go. They're freezing.
I can only say that's probably in my household too. Women want it to be cold at 60 degrees in the summertime, but when it turns winter, they want it at 106 to be warm.
You got to get the long johns with the footies in them.
Well, yeah. I'll just get a onesie with a back flap.
In your case, you're gonna have 2 flaps.
There you go.
Well, listen, I mean, like I said, the aluminum wire is an important thing because we talk about AC disconnects. And one of the things that happens with a home inspection in electrical is we check the AC disconnects.
So, we check the AC disconnects, and that's where... So I want to paint this picture for everyone. In an electrical system, your weak link, everyone talks about a weak link in the chain. Your weak link in an electrical system will always be your terminations. And how Gerald was saying, we have the eye. A licensed plumber and a licensed electrician will have the eye to look for those weak links, to prevent them, and to bring those to your attention. So in weak links, it'll be an AC disconnect. Or a bad breaker connection, or the terminations at a receptacle or a switch, like we mentioned. So going on to the heater loads, and the colder months, which we're going to start, seeing the cold fronts coming in, is we turn on our heaters and then that demand comes in. And what I mean demand is that draw of power. And what that does is that puts a lot of stress on those connection points. So if you have a disconnect, in your attic, or a disconnect in your garage, or whatever enclosure, a closet, that's been sitting there for a few years, or it's never been properly installed, that connection can be weak and it causes issues.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't recognize, but one of the things by code is Nolox or Penetrox. It's a grease formula that goes onto aluminum feeders, especially disconnects for air conditioning.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to where, we put the Nolox on, and it's anti-corrosive. It protects the aluminum wire that way and the lug itself, because when we run into a disconnect, even a panel or even its lugs, and it's not been applied, they lock in place.
That's right. A lot of times, too, the lugs themselves are aluminum on the breaker, and then sometimes they're copper. So now you're putting two metals together and creates even more problems with metals that are not the same, copper and aluminum.
That's the thing that, a licensed electrician would know, that the breaker, the receptacle, the wire nut, the switch will have ALCU listed on it. That's meaning that it is certified to work with either aluminum or copper wiring.
Well, I understand what you're talking about from the aluminum branch circuits and the aluminum feeders. From an audience standpoint, that we've said this over and over, but we want you to call us for a home inspection so we can pull the panel cover off. The process for that, right, Juan? When we come out and inspect it, they're going to understand exactly the difference between copper and aluminum. More importantly, they're going to know that they may have a problem with this too.
Yes, exactly. You give us a call and we'll check all these connections for you. We'll go through your house thoroughly to make sure that everything is up to par. And if you get I'm just going to say Joe Schmo. If you get a Joe Schmo to do some repairs or whatnot in your home and he accidentally ties aluminum wire and copper together, that's just a big no-no. And like I said earlier, that just causes the aluminum wire to corrode. You're not seeing it. It happens a lot.
Well, one of the things people don't realize is that the service feeders coming from Florida Power and Light is aluminum.
It's aluminum, but the like I said, the lugs themselves, the termination points in that meter can, in the meter main, in the electrical panel, those are designed to hold that aluminum wire.
But they do get loose and they heat up and they do go bad. And a lot of times we find people call us from the dryer's not working or it's not heating up or lights are blinking, and that's when we find the aluminum wire beating the neutral, probably causing problems.
Yes, because aluminum, like I said, it expands and contracts with heat. So that termination gets loose over time, and it should be tightened down and torqued to factory specifications once a year.
Yeah, people don't recognize it really. The panel is the heart of the home, right? I was told a long time ago, the electrical panel is the heart of the home, just like it is the heart of your body, and then it feeds out to those things like air conditioners and water heaters, and so we are the heart of the home. And if you don't get your heart checked, like me, every year, you really can have some problems, right, Gerald?
That's it.
And a lot of times people don't realize is that the winter time is when we see more power being consumed than the summertime. And it's because of those heaters.
It's because of the heaters themselves.
And it's also because of the water heaters. And that's something that, I also wanted to touch base on. We get a lot of calls about water heaters, especially this time right now when the air is cooler and it stays cooler for days at a time. The middle part of the day when it warms up is not enough. The groundwater coming into these heaters is going to be a lot colder. And so we get a lot of calls about maybe my heaters going out. Because it's not as warm as it normally is, and what happens is your heater's trying to adjust, and like Anthony says, everything's going to pull power. You're going to turn your power on for the heater because it's a little chilly first thing in the morning to warm up the place. Your water heater is also going to draw more power as well because the input water coming in, the groundwater, is going to be colder than it normally is. And when that happens and it hits those elements, it's going to take more amperage draw to heat that water and kick in, and it's going to actually run longer for the water heater because it's going to have to maintain it. So every little time you open that warm tap and you bring in say 50 or 60 degree water versus what is normally 70 some degrees, it's going to take a lot more to heat that water. And when you're taking that shower and it runs for a minute, and all of a sudden this input water first thing in the morning is freezing cold coming in. yeah, you're not going to take as long a shower because it is going to offset the temperature in that tank, especially for the people in condos because they're dealing usually with a 30 or a 40-gallon tank, which is not going to adjust as quickly as say a home that has a 55-gallon tank.
A lot of times, I mean, in solving some of that problem is running a circulating pump, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can run circulating pumps, I mean, on an existing system, right?
Correct. In most applications we can. Sometimes, in condos, that's not feasible.
That's a little bit difficult because you
Yeah.
got to run a third line back to it, right?
Correct.
But in a home, you could put a recirculating pump on, and they could have, I mean, hot water basically right within.
Yeah, you can get hot water pretty quickly that way versus waiting for, for it to be cold.
Is that something you guys do over at Prevent Plumbing? Do you
We
provide
do it all the time.
So that's something, I mean, for the audience to understand. If your water is cold for 10 minutes before you take that shower, don't fret.
Call Prevent.
What's that phone number, Brian?
239-596-5533.
But a lot of people, I want you to understand out there, the show is designed for smaller companies. It's us small companies kind of giving you some information over the past 2 months, Juan, or 3 months we've been on the radio. And a lot of this is just us trying to help out the homeowner, right, Juan? I mean, a lot of us are just giving you information that we understand. We talked last week and the last week before that about permits and using licensed contractors, right, Gerald? And we want to guide the homeowner just a little bit better because we are licensed contractors. We do put in our dues, right, Brian? And a lot of people don't recognize if you're going to go to the websites of Facebook and Next Door Neighbor and you're going to look for a handyman to do some of the stuff, be prepared to understand that they're first doing it illegally because a handyman cannot do plumbing work, right, Gerald? That's right. And a handyman can't do electrical work.
He can only change fan blades.
Fan blades, that's right. I want people to understand handymen can only touch the fan blades. So if you got a fan blade that's wobbling, you can have them change it. But if you got a fan motor, right, Juan?
Yeah, give us a call.
Give us a call. We're at American Electrical. Or what's that?
239-353-4389.
239-353-4389. And call me if you have any questions at American Contracting at 239-353-4389. So, Brian, you said a few minutes ago, I mean, we were talking about, I mean, permits and people checking. And the county can go up there. I mean, the homeowner could go right there to the website.
Yeah, they can go to the Collier County website. It's they type in Collier County permit tracking. It's going to pop up a portal. They can click on it, and they can actually type in their address or their name if they're the property owner, and it will actually pull up any permits that have been pulled on that property for probably the last 20 years.
So if the audience is listening, I mean, that may be not a bad idea if you were getting ready to purchase a home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I mean, I only say if you're telling me something. What was the website again, Brian?
It's Collier County permit tracking.
So CollierCountyPermitTracking.com, or is it just you clock
Basically, you're going to go on to the Collier County website.
and then go to
And
permitting?
then you'll go to the portal for permitting. And then in that area, you'll see permit tracking.
And then you put in your address or your name,
Yep.
right?
They'll pop in the address, and then it'll pop up there.
So if the audience is listening, I mean, here's something to help you out. If you're purchasing a home or getting ready to purchase a home, you may want to see what kind of work was done to the home, right, Brian? Because that's something that obviously will tell you exactly what they've been doing since it was built. And
I was actually on a job the other day, and the lady had gone to the website and found out her neighbor did not pull a permit for the work that he had done on his property, which evidently upset her. But, that's kind of another tool. Some people go on there to find out if their neighbor or the person down the road or someone in their condo or community pulled a permit for something.
well, the audience needs to understand that the reason why we enforce the permitting situation is because we are licensed contractors, and we pay for this service for the county. I mean, a lot of things the county's really not strict on. I wish they were. One of the things I feel that the county should be strict on is websites, because you really can't stop the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the, Snapchats and whatever it is that they can find out an electrical contractor and who's the electrician on the side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Craigslist, I'm sure you can get anything you want on that one.
A lot more than what you
A lot
want.
more. It's scary, but I will say that, some of the things the audience needs to know is that we're giving you the understanding of what's legal and what's not legal. And I'm sure most of the people want to be legal. Some people get a little bit frowned when they got to hear the county or permits or somebody else is coming to my house to inspect. But just in case, as a couple weeks ago when you guys had a problem with somebody doing a whole remodel and finding out they had they were floaters, right?
Yeah.
Floating by.
Nothing was done right.
Nothing was done right. And so a lot of people have to understand that this show is just about that, just about understanding what we talk about on a weekly basis is to use licensed contractors so that you don't get yourself in trouble. And then use the websites that we used throughout this whole project. I mean, not to say it, but what was the .org? I mean, what is it?
Sunbiz.org.
Sunbiz.org tells you if they're a licensed company, right?
Yeah, then you got-
MyFloridaLicense.com will tell you.
MyFloridaLicense.com will tell you if they're, doing work here in the county and if they're licensed in the county. I do see so many trucks out there that are wrapped, but I go up on the side and look for the license number. That's the first thing I do when I see them. And it's scary when you see this wrap that shows them they can do plumbing, electric, air conditioning. They can build a house. They can do, by the time they're done, they can take down Washington, D.C. in a minute, right?
Yeah, you know what's even scarier is when you see the vans and trucks with no wraps or nothing on it.
And the
Because you know
seven
those
ladders.
guys are out there doing it with absolutely no
Yeah.
license and probably no insurance.
And that's something the audience needs to understand. I mean, we wrap our trucks, right, Brian? We wrap our trucks, Juan.
Yeah.
We wrap them so good that people see them going by. We know.
Well,
we have to.
no, I mean, I just want to say that the reason why we letter and we wrap our trucks is because we take pride in our company. We want to show, our clients that we take pride. We want to show that we are licensed contractors. We want to present that level of professionalism. And, I'm not trying to knock down the next guy who doesn't do it, but it's just that's how we feel. And also to let the client know that who's pulling into their yard, instead of some random, vehicle just unmarked driving in their driveway.
And it would probably be scary. I mean, in a situation as I see in Black Trail. I mean,
I think it's still like that, but it used to be your vehicles were supposed to be marked.
they are,
They were supposed to have your company name and they were supposed to have your license numbers.
and they don't enforce that.
Right. They don't
I mean,
enforce
we
it.
know that because this is kind of one of the number one, number two cities in the nation with
And
buildings.
it's not just a Collier County problem. We
Oh,
see it
it's-
all over the state.
Yeah,
so
it's
we're not just pointing out Collier County.
Yeah,
it's
the
like
East
that all
Coast
over the
is even
state.
worse. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
know who's what over there, and then you could call for a plumber, and the guy says I'm a builder.
Yeah.
So it's a hard situation on the East Coast. I lived that life for a few months over there.
I think you got to worry when he pulls out his wallet and pulls out 5 different business cards with his name on them.
Or maybe it's
Who are
just
you
one.
looking for?
Maybe just one card.
Yeah, right.
It just says a jack of all trades.
There you go.
Call me.
And he says, just call me Yak, and then run away.
Well, we talked about the electrical. We talked a little bit about plumbing. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is the water extraction and mold services.
That's right.
So, Joe, give me a little bit of
Well, I
background on
want
the story.
to touch first on the plumbing side. This past week, we had 5 emergency heaters. And so I want to stress to people, don't wait until your heater pops. Then that feeds my other company, which, I've gotten 2 mold jobs out of the, or water extraction and mold jobs out of the heater popping. I mean, that's something you cannot wait for. And what you have to realize is most service companies are booking right now, a couple of days in advance. And if you have an emergency water heater job, where one pops and now you've got the hot water turned off to your unit and, water's already leaked out everywhere and you're using every towel you have in the house to sop up water. I mean, you don't want to wait till then to have the issue. Your average lifespan of a water heater for part-time residents is really going to be 8 to 12 years. You're really not going to get more out of that because most folks turn them off when they leave, and you have a steel tank that's going to expand and contract every year, and that's going to cause it to rupture prematurely. If you have somebody who's a full-time resident, they may get 15 years out of it. But anything past 6 years is a blessing because that's all it's warranted for. And so, a lot of folks wait till the heater goes out. And, most of the folks are also under the assumption that, it's the elements that are going to go out first. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your heater's actually going to rupture. And that's something you always need to make sure that, you don't want to have an incident in your home. Because nowadays, a lot of times, in a condo, they're centrally placed. In a house, a lot of times they're going to be in the garage. And with new home construction, we do a lot of the tankless, and they're located on the outside. With condos, they are centrally located. So what that happens is, it's going to pop and it's going to put water all through the house. And it's going to make it to where, you're going to have some serious work. I mean, One of them that we're going to be doing the remediation portion for. It's right there by the master bathroom. I mean, that's exposed to the master bathroom, the master closet, the master bedroom, and woe and behold, on the back side you have the kitchen. You never want that happen, because when you talk about pulling that, if it ever gets to your cabinets, nowadays your cabinets are going to have to be pulled and removed, because if you get water on the wood, that's it. I mean, it's going to start breeding microbials, and you won't see that until it becomes a major health risk, because everything's going to be hidden back behind that cabinet.
Well, how often do people? Because I've seen many houses that actually have water heaters in their attic.
Correct.
And every time I see that, I just think that's just bad
Can't
news
wait
there.
to hear about it.
Yeah.
We've had them go out like that, and the homeowner's able to catch it, because a lot of times those do have drains on them, and they'll walk out the door, and if it's in a good location where you can see the drain, they'll see the water coming out. If it's where you can't see the drain, then it's gonna be bad.
Well, I mean, we kind of touched base on the plumbing. I mean, these water heaters, I think a lot of times for the winter time, they start to work double time. When you said earlier about cold water coming in, and elements take a little bit more to take it heated up. And I know in Golden Gate Estates we have sulfur problems, so a lot of times elements get chewed up from sulfur. I know a lot of things. I think the winter kind of kills a lot of it. I mean, the summertime is when we're used to. I mean, things kind of breaking like an AC system, but it seems to be the water heaters breaking the winter season, right? I mean, I'm just guessing. I mean,
yeah, I mean they do. It takes an extra toll on them in the winter season, but the winter time is also when a lot of your part-time residents are coming back, and their heater's been turned off for 6 or 7 months now, and all of a sudden they're cutting it back on, and it's starting to heat up, and once it expands, there may be a fault crack somewhere, and then all of a sudden that steel tank starts to expand, and hello, you've got leak. And
a lot of times you'll get pressure fluctuations in season.
what's that from the from the
City and
in-season?
1
The city's doing that. Plus,
or the
so
county.
many people are in the condo now, and the water probably,
Right.
I mean, fills it up
Right.
a little bit more. Yeah, I one of the things that we talk about over the past few weeks is CPVC versus, PEX. I mean, we've talked about repiping versus, keeping copper in your homes. And we understand from a standpoint of a contractor or a plumbing contractor, even electrical, that, we have to learn to understand that upgrading is just kind of taking care of your body. Like I said earlier about the panel being the heart, but it's also taking care of your home. I mean, if you have a water leak and it leaks all over the back of the garage, I guess it doesn't really make any difference to you. But if you do have a water heater, like Juan said, in the attic, or if you are in a condo, those are drastic, issues that could happen.
yeah, and a lot of folks are of the assumption, well, it just got wet a little bit, I'm going to take these towels and dry it up. Florida climate, that is not something you want to try to just dry up with a towel. Once it encroaches into the wood for the baseboard, the drywall, everything like that, you may not see it on the outside, but there will be things that are flourishing on the interior of that wall, and at some point they will push through that wall. And when they do, that's when you'll notice it, and that's when you'll decide it's a problem. But the health for the interior of that wall will have already been, demolished in. And yeah, because you're going to have microbial in there, and if you're unfortunate enough to have wood studs in there, that requires a whole different situation rather than
Did
steel.
you say wood studs like Brian?
Yeah,
Somebody call?
yeah.
You forgot the B.
Or
I
they
didn't
call
say
tax
studs.
strips.
I just said Brian, and then Brian became a stud.
We said studs, not spuds.
Oh man,
You can only picture us, but
Don't
there's a
call me
reason
a
why we're on
tax
the radio. This is why we're on the radio. There's only one reason. Nobody wants to see our face, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Although
Keep us
Brian,
off TV.
Brian does have a mullet. I'm letting you guys know out there in the audience, he does have a nice mullet. And he got a haircut a couple days ago, and Brian, it's looking good now.
Yeah, and they say we have nice voices.
Sexy
Hello.
voices. I know Gerald's been practicing the sexy voice for a while now. Gerald?
Oh, yeah.
Where's that sexy voice?
I was right here.
$12.99 the first minute.
Well, a lot of things that we talk about is something to do with construction and contracting, and we talked about mold remediation. And water extraction, and some of the things that you guys do over at B&K, and you guys have the capabilities of doing thermal imaging also, right?
Yeah, we can do thermal imaging. We use that a lot on the plumbing side, but we can also do that on the other side, as well as we have moisture meters. We have many ways to detect issues that are in your home. to give you, a good home environment.
I kind of want to jump in on the whole moisture meter, Gerald. The reason being because I have been into a lot of homes where I kind of question it because I walk in and I'll see a bucket of damp red, and then you walk into a room, you walk into a powder bath, a master bath, sometimes even closets, and you can just feel the dampness. You can smell the dampness, and they'll just have a bucket there of that damp red, and the homeowner thinks it's a common thing, but there's actually an issue there, right?
There's many underlying issues probably, and I've been in enough where I can walk in a home and I can tell by the air in their home, even if they have plug-ins and anything, I can tell by the air in their home if they have an underlying issue, whether it be a moisture issue inside the wall, moisture issue from the block or from the AC unit. You can tell these by walking in, and especially if you're exposed enough to it, on a daily basis like we are. And a lot of folks don't realize that the interior area of your home is going to basically be that's where you spend your time after work. So I mean, you want healthy air in your home, because if you don't have that, you're going to have an unhealthy body, and you don't need that. I mean, that's causes you so many health risks that you couldn't believe from having unhealthy air. And I walk into condos to do plumbing jobs, or even to do assessments for the mold, and right away I can tell there's an issue in there. Sometimes you want to bring it up because sometimes it's bad, and you feel bad for the
small. I mean, what you're talking about. I mean, a lot of times it's carpet, right? I mean, carpet, I can smell the mold in it and just keeping that moisture.
You can smell it anywhere, for where it would be carpet, drywall, anything. You're going to be able to smell and tell if they're going to have, a moisture issue from, the AC not having a humidistat on it and pulling enough of the humidity out, or if they've had a leak somewhere at some time. I mean, we've walked into units and they look perfectly fine, and you can tell that, hey, there's been a leak in here at some point. And we actually had that happen, and tore out a wall that was on the back side of the bathroom vanity, and you couldn't tell it by looking at the vanity, but the whole back side of that vanity and that drywall was just pure black, and it was filled with mold. I mean, the guys couldn't believe that, that was back there. And I said, these are health risks that, you're putting on yourself by leaving it. And that's why you need to, if you have any issues, especially if you have buckets of damp red, you need to call us.
Well, this is another one, and I know Anthony could chime in on this, and so can you. I remember being on a project, and they were taking out the dry bar. Dry bar not having a sink there, but they did have a mini refrigerator. And when they took the mini refrigerator out, they noticed a couple of spots of black mold. And as they took the countertop, they took the cabinets out and they cut the drywall. The whole back wall of that drywall was full of mold from that refrigerator not being able to circulate the air.
That's correct. All your little under-the-counter ice makers, a lot of those, they'll make, in the old houses, they just had a pipe basically stubbed up through the floor, and you drop your tube, your flexible tube in there. And what happens is that's, if it doesn't have the proper seal for that, then what you have is an open pipe with open air, and it's going to condensate back there. Same thing with your little mini refrigerators. There's a pan up underneath there, and if at some point that thing's not pulled out, I mean, if that pan has any issues where it doesn't hold that water, it leaks back there. You may not see it from the front, but it's running back and it's soaking up into that drywall, and as that drywall keeps soaking it up, you're never going to see it because it's all going to pull it back there. And then, like you said, when you pull it out, it's going to be black drywall back there. I've actually got one in Marco, the same issue. It's an under-the-counter ice maker the guy had, and it's part of the original setup, and it's black back there, and so we've got to tear all that out and get that done.
Is it? I mean, we talk about inspections all the time, and is there a way to do just a regular mold inspection at home? I mean, is that what you can do?
Yeah, we can do mold inspections. Give us a call. We can come out. We can check it out for moisture situations, for mold, anything like that, and we can tell if you have an issue in that home.
What's that phone number over there, Joe?
239-398-9834.
B&K Water Extraction and Mold Services.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, it's important to understand some of those things because, people don't understand that we're giving the understanding of electrical and checking your electrical wire. Also concerning yourself with aluminum because that's important. Aluminum is actually affected by water. Yes. So we can have some coinciding ideas that both of these could be caused by their own self. I mean, you said about a refrigerator or an ice maker behind a dry bar, and a lot of times that heater heats up in the back of that refrigerator or ice maker, and then it makes moisture on the wall because it heats up from some being so hot. And people don't recognize that, but you can have allergies pretty strong and have mold growing right behind your refrigerator, right?
And never know it.
And that's the problem is we're giving the understanding from electrical and plumbing and mold remediation that you have to have some of these things inspected for your own, health, right, Brian? Yeah. And people, I say it. The first things I've told you before is that if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Yeah. And people have that, mentality.
Well, they do the Band-Aids. You got these air purifiers are being pushed left and right nowadays. And if you're thinking that you have to buy an air purifier, then you got an underlying issue.
Yeah, you've got a bad atmosphere in your home, and you needed to get it corrected. And if you do go into your home and you do find these issues, say you have stained drywall, you may not think nothing of it. Well, it doesn't have black mold on it. Don't get a handyman to just cut out the drywall and replace it. That is the worst thing you can do because you never addressed what might have manifested from that. I have so many people to do that. And if you do have, a company to come out and do it, make sure they pull a demo permit. We bid a job, got turned down for the remediation portion of it. They had another company come in. They did the demo and the remediation. Then they decided while the walls were open, we're going to do, a repipe. So we come in for a repipe. The county inspector comes in, and of course he sees, there was other activity going on. The other company never pulled a permit, and so get a reputable company who's going to pull, the permit. You have to have a demo permit within a certain amount of square foot of wall to remediate. You're going to have to pull a demo permit to get that done. If you have to pull fixtures, showers, things like that, you have to have a demo permit, and it has to be signed off by the county and inspected. And if they do not do that, then they're not doing it by the book, and you have to wonder if they're going to cut that corner, how many more they're going to cut. And with the health and atmosphere of your home, that's never a corner you want to cut. So you have to wonder about that company and their integrity.
Well, one of the things you're talking about demolition, it wouldn't be on a mold, not to say it from a water restoration, extraction wouldn't be you guys to do all the drywall damage or take it out, would it?
Correct, we do. We pull the drywall. We tear out all the drywall.
You pull it.
We pull demo.
Take me through the process. If somebody found mold or you found mold.
Correct, and if we have it above a certain amount of square foot of drywall, then we know that we're going to have to pull a demo permit. And so that's something we're going to have to do. We're going to go ahead and apply for that demo permit, but first and foremost, we're going to also have to perform the work. That way that, we can get it done because you never want to leave it in an unhealthy situation. So we'll go ahead and put in the application for that demo permit and get that taken care of. Start removing the drywall and getting the process going. So, you don't want to leave it out there hanging and the customer end up with health issues. So we'll pull the demo permit, get the process going. But it needs to be done. And
I'm sorry. One of the things you guys talking about, from a mold standpoint, you cut the drywall out. Wouldn't it be best, Brian? To at that point think about repiping a home. Think about
that was his. But like I said, when our county inspector for the repipe came out, he wanted to know about the other permit. There was no other open permits for it, and there was above the required amount of drywall to be placed to have a permit. So that's under review. And like I said, that's a risk you take as a homeowner. If you don't know the processes, and like I said, this was a reputable remediation company, and they still didn't pull the permit. And
the remediation company should have pulled a demo permit, but they were not anticipating us coming in on the plumbing and repiping the place. But the homeowner wanted to do that while all this drywall was cut open. So when we got called in and pulled our county permit for the repiping to make that way everything's up to code and it's done, the people can get their insurance credits.
They've seen all this other work.
They see all this other drywall that's been cut out, and that's the problem.
Well, we talk every week. We talk about licenses. We talk every week about permits, and there's a reason for it, right?
There is.
It's the reasoning to bring it up to code, right, Juan?
Bring it up to code and to protect yourself.
And to protect the homeowner. Each time that we talk about this, from a contractor standpoint to a plumbing contractor to a mold and remediation and restoration company to an electrical company, we're telling you to do the right thing on your side. Don't allow somebody to tell you that they don't have to pull a permit, because we hear that from customers all the time after they've gotten halfway through the job and they've either given a deposit to someone and the guys never showed back up, or they just never finished the job. And that leaves you as a homeowner really not very much, have a strong, case when you call the county and say to them, right, Brian, that the first things out of your mouth is that you're complaining about that licensed contractor, but yet you didn't pull a permit, right? Right. And that's putting your own self in a position. So if you're a homeowner and a contractor says to you, hey, we don't need to do any permitting for this job, I would suggest highly to get a second opinion from us. Right? Juan, call us all out. We don't charge for that, right, Gerald? Right. Everything's free, so we can come out, give us a second opinion, and we can tell you exactly the right way to do it. Because I can tell you, anything you do in the county, from a water heater, right, Brian, to changing out, duplex receptacles to regular decor receptacles, they make you pull a permit. I know it sounds crazy, but protect yourself as a homeowner to making sure that your heart stays strong and that your mind is good, right, fellas?
That's it.
It's a safety issues.
Yeah, the county doesn't side with contractors. I know a lot of people think, the county kind of oversteps their boundaries with all this permitting and requiring so much. The county doesn't care about the contractors really for that stance. They want to make sure that things are done correctly and up to code. So what they're actually doing is, by placing all these sanctions on things, they're actually protecting the homeowners. And that's something that, they really need to realize. I know people complain about the cost of things because you have to have this upgrade bring it up to code, or this upgrade to bring it up to code, but they're actually looking out for the homeowner. And it does seem like a hassle a lot of times for the homeowner, but you have to give the county props because they are doing it for the homeowner's purpose to prevent things like what happened there with, the not getting permitted and not doing, they may not have done it correctly. And that's something the county will come in and inspect. And if it's not done correctly, the county will keep making them do it until it is done correctly. And that's really what you want. You want to make sure somebody's looking out for you, because if you had to call a contractor in, you didn't know how to do it yourself. And if you didn't know how to do it, how are you going to know they did it correctly?
Yeah.
And that's where the county comes in.
It is definitely on the contractor. We talk about bathrooms and kitchens. Weekly and daily, right, Brian?
I'd also point out to people, when you have some work done, get it permitted, but also from your contractors, their subcontractors, make sure you get the warranty information. Yes. Like what the warranty is, because we get called a lot of times to places, and it was just done, yet,
no warranty was
right.
filed. Well, one of the ththings you said just now kind of made me think about it also is that, from a permitting standpoint, I've been in numerous jobs where, homeowners said, well, they told us not to pull a permit. And I know from a fact that when they tell you that most likely there's probably code violations before they even started. A lot of things that kind of makes me concerned is when a contractor, Juan, we had this conversation this morning that we worked for years, and he has his own electrician, right? He's a contractor and has his own electrician. And when we talk about kitchens and bathrooms renovations from a contractor standpoint, I have to have on a permit a licensed